STEMology, the Young Scientist Survival Guide, Session 38. Welcome back, STEMologists. This is a super cool episode, and I'm excited for you all to hear, what we got going on today. So I'm here in the studio with Keisha Avery and Janae Bradley, and they are two very, very, you'll see what I mean, but they're so funny. They're so, relevant and fun and brilliant, of course, and I can't wait for y'all to meet them. So, Keisha, why don't you go first? How are you doing?
Good. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad that I get to talk to you both. So, Janae, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Actually, I'm doing great. I finally have some rest time. So.
Oh, really? Yeah, it's Thanksgiving break right now when we're recording this. So,
yeah. Janae is also.
Oh, I'm Dr. Brad.
Dr. Bradley now.
Oh my God! I forgot you just finished. Hold on. What do you call it? Because I know
I defended my dissertation.
Defended your dissertation. Man, that sounds like you just won a case off a lawyer show and you won it. Now you're Dr. Bradley. Oh my goodness. Hold on, I have to reintroduce her. We also have Dr. Bradley with us today.
Well, I am Keisha Avery. I am currently a third-year PhD student
Candidate,
yes. I forgot. I just passed my comprehensives, which is the next milestone to preparing for my dissertation.
Congratulations to you too.
Oh, thank you. So I am currently a third-year PhD candidate, and I am in bioengineering. I'm studying a material called zeolites, and I'm looking at the material for reducing infections in implants. So like hip implants, heart implants, to reduce infection. So hopefully it can be used as a device coating.
Man, that is so important. That's so important. I recently started working in a hospital, so I have a whole new level of respect for instrumentation and, the scientists behind the medicine. It's so important. Mm-hmm. So, Dr. Bradley?
That's so weird to hear. So, yes, my name is Janae Bradley. I'm so used to saying, I'm a, fifth year, blah, blah, blah. But no, I recently defended my dissertation. So I'm in bioengineering as well, and my research is kind of straddles two areas, or is interdisciplinary research between predictive analytics and tissue engineering biomaterials. So really, my dissertation was looking at developing predictive models for patients in order to predict their risk for disc degeneration. And then I also looked at, let's say you have somebody that's high risk, developing an injectable, minimally invasive treatment for disc regeneration.
Wow. That's so important. I was sorry, I needed a second to digest everything you just said. So you guys are really in there. That's impressive. I can't wait. Okay.
It's coming.
I know. I'm trying to be patient. All right. So like they said, they are two very well qualified women in STEM. They are both biomedical engineers. And I kind of want to use this episode to talk about what it's like to be a Black woman in STEM, because I feel like it's a really unique experience outside of just being an engineering student. So this is a topic that I've been wanting to touch on for months now. When I first started this podcast, it was in the middle of the protests for racial justice. George Floyd had just passed, and there were huge uprisings all over the country, all over the world actually. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't quite comfortable to talk about it, because I honestly just needed to process and really soak in the enormous situation that had just happened. And I finally feel like, I have the footing and I have the words to express it. So these lovely ladies have decided to donate their time today to the STEMology podcast to talk with all of you STEMologists about how important this topic is. So I already said that you guys were Black women in STEM, but would you like to talk a little bit more about your backgrounds and the things that you've experienced these last few years?
A lot, both good and positive, or good and negative. Probably the most is we go to Mizzou, University of Missouri. I have been there since my undergrad. Janae has as well. So we've been through kind of a huge process of transitioning from undergrad to grad school. The biggest transition that I guess stuck with me was our fall of 2015 when we had the protests at MU. So that was a lot. I think that's probably like something that circles through my life a lot and what I've been going through, and how I got to where I am now, because I feel like that we had to play a double-edged sword with how we participated within that protest, as well as me being able to still balance being an engineering student.
Yeah. There's a lot that goes into that.
I've been at Mizzou for like 10 years now, 5 years in undergrad and like 5.5 for grad school. And you said background, right? So yeah. I'm also from St. Louis. Keisha is too. And so I also went to a predominantly Black, kind of all the way through, like elementary, middle school, high school, though my parents made sure that I had interactions outside of the Black community. And then, once you get to Mizzou, I don't know, even though I still had those interactions, it was still a culture shock when you walk into a classroom and you're the only one that looks like you, or there's very few that look like you, and let alone like campus and talking about the Black community. But then you talk about like STEM students within the Black community, within like a PWI, right? And it was a lot to take in. Like Keisha said, there was a lot. I had a rough undergrad, spent a lot of time like by myself studying because I didn't really have peers to study with. So trying to make it through by myself. Grad school's a little different because you do spend a lot of time by yourself. Like you're just used to being, you know what I mean? So it wasn't that hard transition from that, but I also like built a community in terms of, having Black women around me. And I was around during the 2015 protests as well. So I knew exactly where they were coming from on that, especially being in STEM.
Yeah. And there was a term that you dropped that I just wanted to explain for a second. You said PWI, and that's a predominantly white institution. And, it's not really a concept or an idea when you go to a PWI as a white student, because, it's just life for you. It's just normal. But yeah, we kind of have to come up with our own language, our own vocabulary, being inside these different spaces, just because it's not typical for us. So, a little bit about me. I did grow up in mostly white neighborhoods. I went to white elementary, white middle school, a white high school, a very white high school. And when I started in Nebraska at Peru State College, that was mostly white too. I think that there were 3 non-white players on our volleyball team out of almost 30 of us. And, you hear about things, you experience things are said that make you extremely uncomfortable. And I also spent a lot of time by myself, and, they thought, oh, she's just stuck up. She thinks she's better than us. She just doesn't want to be friends with us. She's not friendly. And, maybe some of that was true. But when it came down to it, I was like, I honestly just don't really feel too comfortable. And there are a few aspects of who we are that has translated into our paths to get to grad school and graduate programs and even just undergrad. So what do you think about that?
So I went to a predominantly Black elementary, middle school, and junior high. My high school that I was going to go to lost accreditation. So I ended up getting a scholarship to go to a private school, which ended up being predominantly white. So I had to figure out how to navigate that system super early. So when I got to college, like Janae said, it was still a culture shock. But I think I was able to finally find my footing a little bit, but also I felt like I didn't fit in either card, especially being in STEM. So it's almost like feeling like that person who don't know which box to pick at the time. Like I can't check one at the moment because I don't even know where I belong.
Yeah. It's a skill that you develop all throughout school, or you should be developing, but you don't realize until you really need it that you don't actually know how to study. For at some point you just started taking tests and you started remembering random information.
Yeah, no, it's a struggle too because everybody learns differently, right? Like I had to learn that I was a visual learner. Like reciting words doesn't do it for me. I had to visually see it. And I remember I took my very first test and I got a D. And I was like going through high school, just period, I had straight A's. So, and there was only like one time I had a B and I was like, oh my God, I got a B, you know? So when I got to my first test, my very first D, and I called my mom and I'm just like, it's over with. Like my whole college career is over with.
You know, we always consider the fact that we've moved past the 50s and segregation and things like that, but it's still like that. Like you still have predominantly white, predominantly black schools, and sometimes you have some that are really well mixed, but I think those are more rare. Correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like those are a little more rare, but...
Oh, no, I agree with you.
Yeah. And I like always the statement of we might have at PWIs a diverse campus, but doesn't mean that it's equitable. And I've had to have this conversation with some of my fellow white peers when they're like, oh, but you're here. I see a lot of Black people on campus, but I'm like, look around the classroom. I'm the only one.
Yeah, like when you really break it down, it's, you know, it shouldn't be where you can spot them, count them with one hand, you know, like that's, you know, it could be considered progress, but it's not the end all be all, you know, like just having one or two doesn't mean that you've succeeded in having an equitable or even a diverse campus.
Yeah, I think the person that I was listening to talk, and I think Keisha explained it, is like diversity is not the end goal or the end game. Equity and equality is, you know, you're using diversity as a tool.
Do you want to explain what equity means?
Yeah, so like, I guess the best statement is understanding where people are coming from, where their background is and their experiences, and going from there. Like, I think the best one I saw was like a meme, and then you had people trying to look over the fence, right? And if you make it, you know, you start off and it's not even diverse or inclusive, you know, those boxes are uneven and people can't see over the fence. But then let's say we say equality, right? Well, everybody has the same like box to help them see over the fence, but realizing, you know, some people are short, some people are tall. You can't see over the fence, even though those boxes are equal in height. And then you get into equity and realizing, you know, this person is shorter, this person is taller. Mm-hmm. So making those boxes fit accordingly to that person so that they can still have the same experiences, same chances, same opportunities as other people, as their peers. I think that's one of the best ways that I've seen it.
There goes that visual learning. I love it.
I'm telling you, like, I'm like, yes. I was like, I saw it. I was like, it makes perfect sense.
Yes. So that kind of makes you think about reforming the culture of science and like what it means to see yourself as a scientist. And that representation does matter, because if you step into that classroom and you notice that you are the only one, or there's one of three, probably max, you're going to have a different view of what your abilities are and maybe a glass ceiling that is in place for you versus another student who looks around and sees all white kids, but only 3 Black people. Then they're like, oh, like this is made for me. I am a scientist. This is a position that I'm meant to be in. So there's a different vibe that goes with that and a different mindset.
And a lot of times they don't even notice like that there's a difference between the ethnicities that are in there. Like people are like, oh, I didn't even notice. Like there were other, you know, there's a limited number of Black people in here. And I'm like, yeah, you don't have to.
Yeah, what a privilege to not have to notice your surroundings and have it affect you, you know, your behavior and your thinking patterns.
Right. And then just being a woman too, you know, like you're Black, you're a woman, and you're a Black woman. Like those are 3 different boxes, 3 different experiences.
And that's so interesting that you say that, because, you know, even just that concept, you know, sometimes goes over people's heads, I think. To understand that there's a difference between being Black, being a woman, and then being a Black woman. So there's a whole hierarchy there that I don't think we have enough time to get into today. But what's really interesting is getting comfortable as being the only Black student or being the only minority in the room, because there's a really fine line. There's a very clear balance that we have to straddle between you know, being brave and making sure that your voice is heard versus being aggressive or overbearing or too intense and things like that. And those are phrases that certain groups of people never really have to consider. But us as Black women, we do have to keep that on the front burner of our minds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, labels.
Yeah.
Definitely labels. And there's so many of, like handling situations in groups, when you get group projects and you're like, one of the experiences, like one person, like when we came, it was me and another Black female student in, STEM class, and there was a white peer, and we came do the group project. She's like, oh, I've already done it. And it was kind of like, did she already do it because she's just kind of a control freak, or did she do it because she thought we had nothing to add to the project? And so then you're like, I don't want to come off like, angry, or, it's a battle of trying not to be that angry Black woman.
And that's when you kind of have to master that code switching. Like, how can I say this in a way that will not make you uncomfortable, but I'm getting my point across as an individual who has feelings and I feel these things.
Yeah. And I was going to say, like, why I mentioned like my high school journey is I had to learn how to code switch early, which is interesting. But I realized that I wasn't proud of myself of how I was code switching either, being like the only person. Like when I got to college, I almost was like letting certain microaggressions slide just to get my work done and stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, for real? Cool. Like I would like laugh everything off and make myself appear, I guess, more attractive to them in order to get things done. And I realized I didn't like that quality that was happening to myself. So it was really hard trying to adjust. How do I make myself stand out as a Black woman, even if I'm the only one in this classroom, but still receive the same respect as the rest of my peers?
It's like picking your battles.
Yeah.
Like really picking your battles.
It's interesting that you say that you started to let some things slide, because you know, as an engineering student, as a student in general, like we have so much on our plate. We have so much going on that honestly, sometimes it's more work than for a split second you think it's worth to stop and be like, hey, like, I noticed that you said this, or I noticed that this happened and it made me so uncomfortable. I need you to not do that again, okay? Like sometimes just taking the time to like stand up for yourself in those ways, it takes so much extra energy and so much, rent so much space in your mind that it's easier to just skip over them. And that's, it shouldn't happen.
I feel like that is always one. It's like energy. Am I going to give my energy in this moment to fix this? And then there's also the ones where sometimes I'll just get caught off guard so badly that like I just don't know what to say in the moment when somebody says something, and then later I'm like, dang it, I should have said something, because now I'm over here like I should have said this, and that is not okay. But it's just like you're just so caught off guard by what that person said that you're just like, and the moment's passed.
And I think more times out of not, you're really shocked because you just don't expect like how blatant like either sexist or racist someone is in the moment that you're like, did you really just do this? Like,
and then you start questioning, am I overthinking it? I've had that where I've been in class and the professor said something that was kind of sexist, and I'm looking like, and then later there was other like white women who were verifying me. They're like, no, I didn't think that was okay. And I'm like, okay, thank you. Because that's that battle too, is like, am I like making it more than what it is? So that's a battle too.
Yeah, that reminds me of this one time I had stayed up until, I don't know, at least 2 a.m. like studying for this calculus test. And I am not really a math oriented person. So I had enlisted one of my friends to help me out. He had already taken the class. I think he was in Calc 4 or some crazy thing. I don't know. And so I'm going over Calc 1 like, oh my God, like I have to get this. I have to get an A in this class. I have to do well. And he's like, well, why do you feel like that? Like, just take your B and like, chill. And I was like, I mean, technically, like, I guess I could, but I just need my GPA to be right so that my path to medical school is a little more smooth. And he was like, oh, don't worry about any of that. Like, you're Black, you'll probably get in regardless, like they have quotas and stuff. I was like, like I really had to like stop for a second, because I was just going to skip over it. Like, it would have been easier. Like I have this test, I wanted to focus on that. But I feel like I was really just giving him like the green light to think things like that about Black people, because first of all, I do work just as hard, if not harder, as he mentioned. I do work harder than he does. Just to have the same opportunities. And it was important to me that he acknowledged that I did have the skills, I did have the accolades, I did have the accomplishments to get into medical school on my own merit, and it had nothing to do with my skin. And I feel like sometimes whenever I do achieve something, or I do get an opportunity over someone else, they're like, oh, well, they just need to fill that quota. They just need to fill that spot. And what's better than a Black woman to look diverse and to look inclusive?
Right.
And
Invalidating your value.
And that broke my heart because he didn't see it like that. He thought he was, making me feel okay with, being able to relax a little and chill out. But in reality, he just, broke my heart. I was like, wow, so anything I do, anything I accomplish will be overlooked and not considered just because of who I am. And that, it was really disheartening.
Yeah, that's a fear that I have. And some things that I like second guess myself. I don't think, like, when you're talking to people, non-people of color, like, you're like, that is a fear that you think I got this job just because they wanted to fill a quota. Right. That doesn't feel good on me. Like, I've been working my butt off and doing this and that. And then all of a sudden you're invalidating like my worth and my work ethic. And I really do have a fear. I'm like, I don't want something just because I'm Black or just because I'm a woman or just because I'm a Black woman. Yeah. Like, I want it because I earned it.
That imposter syndrome, it gets you all the time. But as Black women, like, it's a constant thing. For those of you who don't know what imposter syndrome is, there was a podcast episode that I released a few weeks ago, about a month ago, where we just explained that sometimes it's where you feel like you're a fraud or like you don't deserve or have earned your skills or talents or things like that. And it happens to everybody. I'm not going to act like it's just a Black thing. It's not. It happens to everybody all the time.
Levels to it and percentage,
There are, yeah.
They say a lot of your PIs, like those professors that you have teaching you, a lot of them have some form of imposter syndrome. Like, now how much of it, that depends on them, but or the percentage of having imposter syndrome. But
which is a very interesting point, because I feel like a lot of students are intimidated by their professors. But when you personally get to know them, you realize they're sometimes nervous to even give a lecture, and you would never know it.
Like, it's so, like, when you become a graduate student too, you learn a lot. Like, you have a different kind of relationship with professors and with your PI and all that. And you just see, like, my advisor, I think the world of her, and to know that she's introverted. She's like, yeah, I still get nervous. And I'm like, but you're so brilliant. And she's like, yeah, I'm really introverted. I don't like doing this. And I'm just like, wait, what?
What?
Like,
it's crazy because one of the most successful people I know is my dad. And he has been doing his job for almost 20 years now. He's basically a computer scientist, but he's moving towards sales, and half of that is giving proposals to Fortune 500 companies. And he says that he starts sweating beforehand. He's like, he gets really stage fright and things like that. But he's been doing it for 20 years, and he's fantastic at it. So, like, I guess a lot of it is just fake it till you make it type thing. So
honestly,
that's probably my best advice. If you feel uncomfortable, fake it till you make it, until you have that doctor in front of your name and no one can tell you shit. And that brings up, how important it is to have that support system that understands you and is, willing to bat for you and brag on you, just like your friend Keisha here. Like, it's so important.
No, it is really important. Like, family and friends, because honestly, I wouldn't have made it through if I didn't have, like, my friends and my family supporting me, because you go through grad school and it's kind of lonely in some senses, because a lot of times you're doing stuff yourself, or you're in the lab by yourself, or you're studying by yourself. But also having those moments where somebody, like, I can have a pessimistic moment and I give myself like less than a day to have a pessimistic time. And then after that, I'm like, all right, suck it up. What we about to do? Yeah. But, like, I have friends, hence Keisha's like, girl, no, show your Black girl magic. You did this and that. Like, don't question what or if I'm just feeling really down and I call in my family, my mom, and I'm like, this is what happened. Like, before my comprehensive, a week before, I had a panic attack. And I had to call my mom, and she's like, first of all, she's like, I'm gonna get off the phone so you can just breathe, and I'm gonna call you back in like a minute. You know what I mean? But having that is so, so important, but also having people that don't look like you as well. Because most of the people, I was very intentional about, like, my group of friends here are all Black women, all in grad school, getting their PhDs. We have one friend got her master's and is wanting to go to med school, but being intentional, but also being intentional of my mentors, and, you know, a mentor versus an advisor, and having people that don't look like me so they can speak in spaces that I'm not in, that can vouch for me. And so I think that's also so important too, is having that support system within your college career, and especially in undergrad, you know, building that support system and being intentional.
Yeah, I was gonna agree with Janae. Having that support system is huge. The mentor I have now, when I was in undergrad, I am like the worst test taker, and I didn't realize I was a bad test taker because I had testing anxiety, and I was diagnosed with general anxiety disorder. And she was like, "I know you know this information, like, but your test results aren't showing it."
I got that too. I have testing anxiety, and they're like, "It doesn't make sense. Like, you're in here spouting stuff, and then I'm looking at your test, and it's like, go ahead."
You aren't matching up. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, if I didn't have a mentor who noticed that, I don't know if I would have made it through college. And I did get to the point, because I have a mom who's ill, when she was very, very sick, I want to say around my sophomore, junior year. And I just could not focus with school. My anxiety was like so high. I was going through depression. I didn't know if my mom was going to make it. And I got dismissed from the College of Engineering. And I was like, oh my gosh, my life is over. And it's like, I didn't even fail a class. I got all C's and 1 C minus. And it was like the worst I have ever done in my life. I'm like, it's over. I can't do this. And my mentor, who is now my advisor for grad school, was just like, no, you deserve to be here just as much as everyone else. It's just the fact that you have to recognize that you are going through other things that other students might not be going through, whether that's financially or home life, personally. And next thing you know, I appealed, and I had my whole department backing me up,
Really?
including the chair of our department. And I was like,
Incredible.
you know, it was the first time I actually really felt, I don't know, like
supported.
Yeah. And that the system didn't fail me. And I feel like that's important to have, and to understand that just because someone doesn't look like you doesn't mean they're against you either.
Because all those people in your department, like, we don't have any black professors, period, in the department. So, like, all those people were white women, white men. Asian men, Asian women, like, on that scale.
Okay, I love that your journey wasn't conventional. I love that, because not every journey is. And there are a lot of different aspects about life that are going to take you through the gutter and then right back out. So it's staying on your track, realizing that you're there for a reason. You deserve to be there. And you got this, like 100%. That's just what it is. And Janae had mentioned that sometimes it's okay to just take a day, cry a little, watch your rom-coms, eat your ice cream, whatever you got to do to hop back in the game, because the train's not going to stop moving just because you're not on it. So you got to get back on that train and keep it moving, because, you know, your goals aren't really going to wait for you. And the second thing I want to comment on is that representation in the diversity of your circle, because the people that vouch for you, like you said, aren't always going to look like you. And 2 of my biggest supporters right now are Asian men. These 2 have honestly gone to hell and back for me. And it was something I never really even expected. They noticed something about me, being open and honest with them about my goals. And they 100% just said, well, how can we help? And, you know, I told them, I was like, well, maybe a little bit of internship here, a little bit of research there, that'd be great. And they're like, okay, like, let's make it happen. And so, you know, opening your circle, being willing to talk to different groups of people and understand perspectives is going to be such a major key. And it's going to help you in more ways than even what we're talking about now. Another thing that Black women are always finding that they have to do is take responsibility for their generation and kind of take the weight of a bunch of different things on their shoulders. So I feel like sometimes whenever I accomplish something, even though it is 100% for me and it's because I want to do, I feel like there's, you know, another little girl 10 years behind me just waiting to be in the same position I'm in now. So I feel like there's a lot of responsibility that comes with it. Is that something you guys have experienced?
Yeah, I feel like it's almost like, I don't want to say a blessing and a curse, but it's almost kind of like that, because I feel like on the same note, we're talking about like having, support system of family and community, right? And I'm like, yes, I need that all the way. But then I also feel that weight of like, I can't fail, right?
Yeah.
Because you have so many people looking up to you because you may be the only one that they know or that they see in STEM or doing, for me, engineering, going and getting my PhD. And so it's always like, it's boosting because it's like, yeah, I got to do it for that little girl so that it'd be more little girls that can see me and say, I want to be a doctor too, right? But then it's also like, oh man, I can't fail because that little girl, like she need me here because it ain't nobody else going to do, because it's also like, if I don't do it, who else is going to do it? Because there's nobody that looks like me. So I feel like it's a boost, but it also can be a weight too.
Yeah. The first time I experienced that, I had started doing ballet when I was 2 years old, and I started at an all-white ballet school, and I was the only Black girl for about 8 years. And then finally, a couple more started going, and, all the moms talk or whatever. And my mom told me, these other 3 little Black girls that are here, they're here because of you. They saw you dance in a couple performances, and they decided that they wanted to start dancing too. For that, I never saw it as like an accomplishment that I was dancing. I was like, I'm just out here dancing. Like, that's just what I want to do. But it's crazy how people see you and they decide like, this can be my future too. This can be something that I'm working towards. This is something that is meant for me too. I was just too shy, or I didn't think that it was for me until I saw you do it. And there's a lot of weight that comes to that. I felt the weight after my mom told me, but beforehand I was, just doing my thing.
Didn't really think about it.
Exactly.
That's interesting you say that, because I danced too, but I went to a predominantly Black studio. So it was always interesting going to competitions because our music was different, seeing, like our group. And I know a lot of people joined our studio just because of that, because you're like, oh, we see all this whole Black studio, performing and stuff, and we want to join too. And they're doing music that we know. Interesting. And I didn't think about it until I started getting older and people pointing that out, and like, and I'm like, oh, dang, yeah. We are the only ones that look like us on this stage.
It's so interesting hearing your experiences, Janae, because you did have a predominantly Black experience, which I feel like there are, especially in the spaces that you're talking about, I feel like there's a lot of individuals, especially Black women, who don't occupy, like going to an all Black dance studio. I wish,
right.
Like,
owners are Black, Black,
yeah.
And, it switched over management, but owners became Black, and, it's just, it was very interesting, but that's a whole nother subject, because then you get into like the difference in body types and like under, as a Black woman dancing versus like our white peers, and like we just tended to be a little bit thicker. And but that's a whole conversation. Like you're like, yes, not even on STEM, even though, arts and science go hand in hand. But
I was going to say the question is really interesting too on you feel like you can't fail. Part of my journey is I don't think I've really seen much positivity within the Black community because of the environment that I grew up in. So everything that I did outside of before high school, like summer camps to dance to everything, it was always someone providing that opportunity for me. And I was always the only one. So all of the engineering and STEM camps I went to, I had a teacher who was white, who was just like, hey, I noticed that you really love this subject. Would you like to go? And she paid for me to go to summer camp. And I was in 6th grade. I've been working out with my therapist at the moment that I am experiencing a form of survival guilt. Majority of everyone who came from my neighborhood fell to statistic, whether they're dead, in jail, or just never made it out. Wow. And I sometimes question like, why me? Or why was I like blessed or lucky to have this opportunity? And I'm really struggling with not feeling guilty with my success. If I don't do well, I feel like I am taking an opportunity from someone else that really could have used it more than me. And it's kind of like heartbreaking. So I'm working so hard with trying to figure out how do I overcome that, and what can I do to make sure there's not other individuals who end up like that. Like everybody's like, well, you made it, like you beat a statistic. I go, I don't want to be the only one to beat the statistic. I want my community to beat the statistic.
You just want that statistic gone.
Yeah,
just
I don't want any statistics. I think the biggest thing that we can do right now is exactly what we're doing, is talking about it, bringing awareness, and telling people that you can't give up. You have to keep trying, even if every single door is closed in your face. I want to say at some point there has to be a break, but that's not really guaranteed either. So.
And I think also letting people know that it's okay to fail. Like we have this fear of failure, but we didn't make it here without our failures. So especially students of color and Black students in particularly who look like us, I always tell them, like, they're like, but you're doing this and doing this. And I'm like, yo, I failed so many times.
Or got rejected.
Yeah.
Basically I got 2 rejections in one day within less than 24 hours. And I was kind of like, yay, I beat a record. Like, because you just get so much rejection and you fail so much. And I always say for every, like, there's going to be a bunch of no's, bunch of rejections. You're going to fail, but there's always that one time that leads you to that next step. And it's vital that you go through.
It's important that, someone takes a chance on you and you have an
right. Yeah. And I my mom had to point it out to me and she was like, I think you're afraid of failing and you're afraid of being rejected. And I ended up getting like rejected from something that I really wanted. And I was like, dang, like I failed miserably. And I was like, and I feel horrible, but I was like, you know what? Like, I'm still okay though. Like, this is the worst I felt, and I'm still okay. Like,
yeah, you kind of put on like this mask for a second, and you're like, I don't really want it, just in case you don't get it. I find myself doing that a lot, where I'll go something like wholeheartedly, but then when it doesn't happen, it's like, yeah, like it's whatever.
It's like you lower your expectations. Yeah,
that's interesting that you have that viewpoint because mine is like, well, it just wasn't for me. I don't know. I've had enough of them that I'd be like, well, not in this time. And sometimes it's not even like not for you. It's not for you in that moment because I got like a fellowship and I applied for that mug like 4 times and I didn't get it. And then that 4th time I got it. How you view life, that's just interesting. But you do what you do in order to make it through.
And it's so funny that you said that because Janae was my mentor in undergrad and she always will tell me, and she tells me this now, it's just not for you. Now I'm like slowly adjusting that mindset.
I mean, there's probably something better around the corner.
And that's what life has taught me at this point is that, there was always, so I didn't understand it in the moment. Going through grad school, I've been broke. I've had my funding cut. I've been picking peaches to earn income. My family had to step in. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to pay my rent. Had to pay off, use my savings to pay it off. And it's just like, I didn't understand it in the moment. But it just later on, once something good happened, then I'm like, I had to go through that in order to become who I am as a STEM student, as a Black woman, and just personally.
This is fantastic. And I want to continue on this conversation. So this has been great. We're going to stop right here. If you enjoyed this episode, just go ahead and share it with a friend. We have a lot of really great content prepared for this next episode. I can't wait for all of you to hear it and to share what we have to say. So follow me on the STEMology Podcast on Twitter and Facebook at STEMologyYSSG and on Instagram at the STEMology Podcast. Thank you for listening to our 38th episode of STEMology, the Young Scientist Survival Guide. Tune in with me, Alina Adams, for episode 39, Minorities in STEM Part 2. See you next time.